Good evening, everyone. Hello, hello. Good to see you. As you guys just keep coming on, I'm just going to share this to Facebook, get us set up there so that we can have everybody listening there. While you're waiting, say hi in the chat. Hey, Lisa and Eric. Good to see you here. G'day, g'day. Okay. We should be live. Cool. All right, we're getting it together. On time too. Hi, Margie, is it? From LI, New York. Whereabouts is that? I mean, I guess I know where New York is, but yeah, let me know. Awesome. Hi, Noel. Good to see you. Okay, cool. All right. Well, this is going to be fun today. We've got a guest again. We haven't had a guest for a little while. It's been me and Dr. Bart, so it'll be fun to have another doctor on and be able to chat with us and talk a lot about chronic illness and Lyme and dive into some really good stuff. So I'm excited for this one. We'll just wait a few more minutes here while we get set up. Oh, Long Island, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Dr. Bart in the house. How's it going?
Going great over here.
Awesome.
They're good over there in Australia, I assume?
We are good, although it's getting colder. So
well,
what happens as you come into winter? You guys are coming into spring.
Yes, and it is like getting awesome spring weather right now.
Yeah, nice. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, I haven't got Jaban on here yet, but I'll check in on him. But I'm excited to have a guest on our show. Dive in to a little bit of Lyme disease, chronic disease, some different things.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't had a guest in a little while, which is great. And of course, I have my guest with me, Dr. Bob, and you can't see it, but I'm sure he'll make his appearance. And George is here in the house as well. Yeah, and this topic, I tell you, great topic. This is probably definitely one of the more misunderstood types of topics when we talk about things like Lyme disease, and maybe we can get Dr. Jaban to even touch on some other things maybe even PANS or pandas, things that kind of all fall into these categories, these really strange, strange isn't the right word, but not so often talked about, but there's actually a massive amount of it taking place here. So hopefully we'll get them to do a little deep dive. And I'm going to try to fix my lighting here.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, you guys, those of you that are joining us, if you have questions, we'll ask Dr. Jaban or anything for Karen and myself. Of course, you can continue to ask. Just make sure you put it in the chat section down below. And then, of course, if you're on Facebook, Karen, do we go live on Facebook yet?
We are live on Facebook. We are. Everybody can tune in there.
Yeah. Welcome everyone on Facebook again. And again, if you have questions, you too can feed. You can put your questions right there on the Facebook chat, and they will feed them to us, and we will get them answered through our show tonight. And we'll get started. We're just kind of waiting on our guest to show up. Hopefully,
waiting on our guest. Yeah. So look, this is amazingly cool that we get to have people on all sides of the country, all sides of the world, all come on and be able to share info with you. But the downside of that is sometimes we then have technical difficulties. So we're just trying to get Jaban here. Give me a couple more minutes and then we will hopefully we will be good. If you guys also haven't, please go and subscribe and download our podcast version of this show. We're raising up in the ranks, which is really exciting. And so we just, the more you can leave us a review, really helps us spread this out to more and more people. So if you guys can go to your favorite podcast platform, you can go to Apple Podcasts, you can go to Spotify, you can go to Google Play, and just hit that subscribe button and then write us a quick little review. We would be so grateful.
Awesome. So Karen, the last, our last two shows, we did the Q&A and continue to get great feedback. So again, if you guys have questions, we'll do another Q&A in a couple of weeks, and you guys can keep kind of filtering those through. And I have a list of them on my desk, and then even some came up. Well, some of the clients that are in today asked me for the next show to answer some. So for some reason, our guest can't make it tonight. I have us covered in just Q&A. So are you?
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself while I just give him a quick call.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm not going to bring up any of the secrets, but nonetheless, I get just a kind of a random question, and I'll talk about this until Doc gets on. I got the question today: what do I think about the Impossible Burger from Burger King? So I thought it was a joke at first, but it really wasn't a joke. So we went on to kind of talk about, and when I kind of made the gesture, like, you got to be kidding me, like that's one of the worst things you can put in your body. The interesting thing was that they were shocked a little bit that the Impossible Burger might not be so great for us. So my quick answer was that, one, it's a soy-based product. I get that it's not meat, but we, unfortunately, the premise of the entire Impossible Burger was that something's wrong with meat, and there's nothing wrong with meat unless we have bad meat. So I'll dive into that deeper, Karen, at another time if we want. Did you communicate with Dr. Moore? Boom, there he is.
Done. We've got him. We'll just get him to turn back on his camera and unmute, and then we're good to go. Jaban, good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
No, it's been forever. So thanks so much for jumping on.
I got done working and then ran in here so I could get on a call with you guys and talk a little bit about the Lyme disease today.
Your sound's just a little bit, I can't hear you very well. Could you hear him, Bart?
Yeah, I think we're getting a little feedback there, Doc.
Is this any better now?
Getting a little bit of that feedback when you speak.
Yeah, I'm going to keep pulling things apart. And let's see, does that make it any better?
Not particularly.
Well, give me 1 second. Let's see if I got you.
Okay, cool. I think it'd be good if we could fix it, right?
Yeah, that would be a little tough for a whole show to listen to that.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks for your patience. We'll get there. As I was saying, the pros of this is we get to talk to everyone. The cons are there's always some
side topic. At some point, we will definitely cover the Impossible Burger.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's right. Yeah, go.
Came up more. It was more eye-opening just having that conversation than I thought I really needed to discuss. And then some of the other foods that are out there that are really, that are coming from what I call marketing companies more so than food companies. So that'll be a good, fun little conversation when that time comes.
Awesome.
A little bit different here. I'm gonna log into my phone and try to do it that way.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's a really weird sound. Like it's like kind of like sound on when you talk.
Yeah, it's definitely a strange noise.
Not sure what your computer's thinking. It's like overloading. It's like, what? We've got people talking to us from all the way in Australia. We're gonna shut down.
This would be great if this works. It'd show us our ability to adapt and adjust and then quickly execute again.
Totally.
For everyone that's already logged in, thanks for hanging in here. Just work with us for a little bit. We'll figure this out one way or another. Just some technical difficulties. Sound.
All right. Talk to us, Jay. Oh, okay. It's still connecting to audio.
There we go.
Different.
I think it'll work. It'll work. Just need to turn off the speakers on something. Oh, yeah. Talk now?
There we go.
Oh, we're in business. Thank you for hanging in with us. Awesome. All right, let's get started. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Health Made Simple show. Before we get started, I want to intro our host, Dr. Bart Precourt, who has been a healthcare provider for over 20 years, practicing a range of modalities, including chiropractic, acupuncture, kinesiology, nutrition and supplementation, and functional testing out of his clinic, Balance Health Studio in Seagrave Beach, Florida. He's also the founder of the Health Edge program, which is a virtual health program for entrepreneurs and executives wanting to take their health to the next level. So he's also worked with thousands of celebrities and athletes all around the world and shares his wisdom with us every week right here on the show. This week, we also have a very special guest that I'm excited to have here, Dr. Jaban Moore, who is a DC located in Kansas City, Missouri, who works virtually with clients all around the world. So I'm sure you'll dive into this a little bit more, but at 25, you went from being an award-winning top athlete in college to feeling like you couldn't get out of bed, and went to a lot of appointments looking for answers, spent endless amounts of money on tests and appointments, but doctors only wanted to give you Band-Aids. So Dr. Jaban was later diagnosed with Lyme disease and dedicates his practice to helping clients get to the root cause of their chronic illnesses. So Dr. Moore specializes in Lyme disease, co-infections, PANDAS, autism, heavy metals, parasites, gut health, mitochondrial support, and other viruses and pathogens. And he also does a ton of awesome content out of his Facebook group every day. You provide so much free value to everybody. So thank you so much for doing that here with us on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to do it. I love spreading information about those topics. There's just never enough information. That's why I'm always out there on Facebook trying to educate, because I mean, shoot, I just got done in my clinic just minutes ago, and a young girl was here who was telling me that her acne, her chronic headaches, her digestive tract that was a wreck is just gone. And like all those things are just gone. And she thought that was just life and that's how she was going to be. And that was just how it is.
Doc, I appreciate you coming, especially on short notice. And I get what it's like to, work with clients all day. And I did the same thing today. And then we step into these, different roles for a moment to do just like you said, just to educate. So I appreciate you being here. I know your time's valuable. And I got an opportunity to look at some of your videos, and dude, thank you. Like for just the work you're putting out there, the information you're putting out there, and the values, especially in these topics. Lyme disease, PANDAS, mold, man, big topics, probably misunderstood is probably the right word when I say out there in the medical community, or really in most healthcare practitioners' offices, how to deal with those. So I'm looking forward to diving in deep a little bit. But I'd love if you would maybe share us a little bit more about your story with this, because I think that's where people can relate and understand that you were diagnosed with Lyme's. And so I know firsthand that this isn't something that you wave a magic wand and it goes away. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, as I look back on my journey, I was a college athlete, a couple-time All-American, and I was always strong. I always felt good when I was in college, but honestly, I stopped getting stronger about 18 years old. And I was still training heavy and hard all the way till I was about 23, 24. I didn't really understand why I just kind of hit that wall. And I was like, I'm so young, but maybe I was just, hit that wall because you just don't develop anymore as you get older for some people. Anyway, went to chiropractic school, lost all the extra weight, got really fit, started eating clean, started feeling great. And then it all crashed down. Erectile dysfunction happened, all that stuff that she talked about. And that's what really sent me looking was, hey, I'm 25 and that's not supposed to happen. And the doctor's like, just sometimes it does. There's a pill for that. And I go, but why? Why is it happening? Why do I feel like crap? I've got abs. I'm 25. I'm eating clean. I'm sleeping. Yeah, I'm in a tough school, but that's about it. I was in chiropractic school, but this is unacceptable. So whether I went to functional medicine doctors, whether I went to acupuncturists or medical docs or whatever other types of practices, nobody gave me a real answer. They just didn't know. It was, here's a pill, here's a powder, whatever, good luck. And then I was at a conference and somebody's like, you might want to try out Lyme disease. That's probably something that could, happen to you. And I go, all right, what do you know about it? I don't know. Anybody can fix it? Well, there's this guy in Wisconsin. So I drove to Wisconsin from Kansas City about 6.5, 7 hours through a storm with my buddy, Dr. Watts. And now, after all that, we're both in practice, both healthy, both vibrant. Dr. Lindsley up there in Wisconsin was able to help us. And now I feel well, and now I'm doing CrossFit and working out, and I'm over that fear of, erectile dysfunction being the rest of my life, taking a pill. And it's hard for me to even talk about now, even years later, even overcoming it. I'm just like, a guy at 25 admitting that that's a problem. It's kind of devastating.
Yeah. I'm from Connecticut originally, and which Old Lyme was literally just down. It was a town over from us. And I was telling Karen before the show that my first experience with Lyme disease was back in 1987, and this is like at the very beginning. I'd say that the first I'd ever heard of a diagnosis was probably in 86. So this is 85, 86, 87. And maybe you have the timelines better there. But anyways, it was my brother's girlfriend. She got Lyme disease. So growing up in Connecticut, you're outside all the time. You're running through the forest. You got, you're pulling ticks off your body every day. And it wasn't until a friend of ours, someone close to us, young, healthy high school girl, it's this Lyme disease none of us ever heard of, and ends up literally emaciated, muscle fatigue and wasting and bedridden for months at a time, and months and months and months, until a year later, she was a fraction of the person that she was when she started. That was my first exposure, and thinking, man, I don't want to get that. I don't know what that is. So maybe we can just start off by, the name of our show is Making Health Simple Show, our Health Made Simple show. So just for our audience, maybe they've never heard of Lyme's, and I think that's what was your scenario is. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what is Lyme disease, and then we'll dive a little bit into like the symptoms and the testing and stuff like that. But just what is it?
So Lyme technically is a bacteria. So it's Borrelia burgdorferi, which is just named after the doc that discovered it. And it's a spirochete, which is a type of bacteria that can burrow really well into your tissue. So it was originally thought to come only in ticks. Now it's a multiple vector carried infection. So it can be from any type of organism that bites. So whether that's a mosquito, tick, spider, flea, whatever. It can also be transferred from mother to daughter, which I see families all the time. Now, you were saying back in 87, I've got 87, 88-year-old women who have been sick most of their lives because Borrelia technically has been around I mean, they've even found it in mammoths way back, but this is just a bacteria. It's just a bacteria, just like strep and staph and Clostridia and H. pylori. It's a bacteria that if it gets an opportunity in a host that is weakened, it can cause a lot of ruckus. But Lyme got its feet wet a little bit more because what it does is it's really hard to take care of because it doesn't stay in your bloodstream. Since it burrows, it's going to go after the white tissue. It's going to go after the brain tissue. There's studies that show that it gets into your brain within 12 hours. Whereas a lot of infections that we get, like strep, doesn't really get to the brain of adults very easily. Although it can, those things don't get there nearly as easily. So Lyme getting there so quickly, then getting rid of it with antibiotics doesn't work super well. You can go to PubMed, and there are articles that show that chronic Lyme does not respond well to antibiotic therapy, even though that is the main therapy used in Western medicine right now. So to make it really basic, Lyme, as in Lyme disease, is a bacteria, but it's never, ever alone because it gets in your body, it weakens your system, and it's almost always got friends. So I always call it Lyme and friends, although it's technically Lyme and co-infections like Babesia, Bartonella, Ehrlichia, mold, mycoplasma. These are all other infections that come along with it. So you can never just say Lyme by itself. And what's funny is when you get out in the community, if somebody says Lyme's, we know that they're not in the Lyme community because they don't live it. Whereas Lyme disease has no S on it. So if you're ever on Lyme pages, that it's a joke that goes around. And although I'm like Lyme's just means that it's like Lyme and friends, right?
Nice. So you said, it's interesting you say that. And one of the things you said there, I think is most interesting, and especially in this era that we have, you know, like COVID and a virus and everything, obviously there's a little different with a bacteria, but there's similarities, is the weak host part. You know, you're a practitioner like just like myself, we're always looking for that root cause, always looking at, how do we become a little closer to being superhuman? How do we get the human body to function at a higher level? And I think in your story, if I heard you correctly, you basically contracted Lyme, then got better per se, you got stronger, and then probably got weak, got vulnerable, and then it came back full steam ahead. And I think that conversation right there, weak host. So what else does it look like? Like, what are someone that has, Lyme, what does it look like? Well, how does it show up in their life? How do they even know?
So if you had just Lyme, you may never know it because your body might be able to handle it so long as nothing else breaks the camel's back, right? So nothing else weakens you down. But once you start getting weak, and that can be from emotional stress, that can be from, COVID, that can be from Epstein-Barr, it can be from whatever other things come in that add on top to weaken. But the number one symptom of Lyme is migratory pain. So pain that just kind of moves around your body. So those people are like, well, I hurt over here today, doc. Well, now I'm hurting over here, and then it's moving over there. That's one thing. Another thing can be headaches, especially headaches right along the back of your neck here. Numbness in patterns that make no sense. So I was chiropractically trained, right? So numbness that makes no sense at all. So if you have numbness in this hand and then the foot on the opposite side, stuff like that, or you got numbness in both hands, but there's no spinal reason for it. Lyme. Well, it could be Lyme or mold, to be honest, but Lyme is one of those big things that it can be there. So, other patterns, just fatigue, just general fatigue, achiness in your hands. So people that are feeling like they're developing arthritis at 30, 40, 50 years old, definitely. I've seen a lot of people come with a ton of autoimmune diseases diagnosed on them. And then we go in and we work with Lyme, and all of a sudden autoimmune disease symptoms are gone. So Lyme is called the great mimicker, though. So there's more than 150 symptoms associated with it. So it's kind of a fallback for some doctors. It's, oh, well, we don't know what you have, so you have Lyme disease.
Yeah, I could see that because right away, saying that there's moving pain, and if, especially someone like the work we do, if we're so practicing with chiropractic there, you see pain move all the time, headaches, how many people don't have headaches at the base of their neck or achy hands or arthritic type stuff? The fact that you're calling it a great mimicker, I think that's like important for our listeners to know that just because you have those symptoms doesn't mean it's Lyme. And like you said, it could be an easy fallback, especially fatigue. And nowadays, I think back 24 years ago, like when I started practicing, it seemed like an adjustment fixed everything. And now it seems like with as much that people been exposed to, the different chemicals, the poor nutrition, the diet, the environmental toxins, et cetera, more and more bacteria is floating around, more and more viruses coming around, that people are just literally getting weaker and weaker, getting beat down. So there's so many of these symptoms across the board. So let's just say someone's sitting there and they're adding up and they're like, man, I got some fatigue, my hands hurt, I got a headache now and then. Where do you go from there? So they come into your office, how are you then trying to narrow down that group? Because, unless there's some new testing, I think, the testing that I've been exposed to, it's been good, but it's not been, absolute when it comes to some of these different bacteria. So what's the next step in that?
Yeah, so the testing's awful, to be quite honest. It's just awful. The CDC.
I was just being nice. I wasn't.
The CDC back in like 2015 said something to the effect of 25,000 people were tested positive, and they found that more closely to 300,000 to 1 million people were likely infected during that year. It was their estimate. So that's off of their test, which is awful. So then there's a few other labs, IGeneX, DNA Connections, Vibrant America are the other 3 labs that I use more often. There are other ones out there. IGeneX is probably the gold standard amongst a lot of the Lyme community right now, but running that test with co-infections can run you $2,000. And most insurances don't cover that if you're going to run all the co-infections. DNA Connections is a little bit easier because it's a urine test. It can be ordered online at $600, and Vibrant America really is making some great headway there. And I think there's about $750 for some of the different testing, but they also do many of the co-infections with it, because running Lyme by itself just simply isn't great. But realistically, what I'm going to be doing when I work with people is we look at your blood work to see, do you have some inflammation? Do you have some other markers going on with your red and white blood cells? And then from there, it's just listening to symptoms and signs, because here's the deal. Arthritis, autoimmune diseases, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, there's a cause for every single one of those. And I don't accept any of those as reality, because what are those things? What is fibromyalgia? It is pain that someone didn't know how to diagnose with a cause, so they gave it a name. Just like chronic fatigue is you're tired and we don't know why. And IBS is your stomach hurts and we don't know why. Well, that why could be Lyme disease. And if we really dive into it, it's probably either Lyme or one of its co-infections, to include mold and parasites, Epstein-Barr, and these other root cause things. Because when I really break down to people what causes most disease in the world, there's 3 main things that I really break it down to. Toxins, so your glyphosates, your chemicals that are put into our foods, along with other things like mold, which is an environmental toxin, infections, which is Lyme and all of its friends, and then lastly, traumas, whether that be physical or emotional. Those are your main 3 things that create disease. Now you can get into, well, if you starve yourself or other things that you can create disease too, but the main 3 that are causing disease, at least in the Western world, are those 3 that I brought up.
Yeah. You mentioned something earlier about it's a bacteria in one form that I think you said is a spirochete and can burrow. I don't know if people really understand what that means. And so I'll often communicate and talk about that being a stealth pathogen, a very intelligent pathogen, that they literally know how to hide from our immune system. They know how to hide from our white blood cells, and our white blood cells will chase them. And literally, like on our labs, you'll see those with those chronic viruses and bacteria, you'll see those white blood cells start to drop over time. Maybe just shed a little light on that idea, the fact that they literally do burrow into different organs and glands in the body, hiding from your immune system.
Yeah, so they literally are a spirochete, which looks like a corkscrew. So imagine a little corkscrew that just burrows its way into wherever it wants to go, and it's intelligent. It knows that your immune system is primarily in the blood. And the blood doesn't go everywhere. It doesn't go into different tissue types very often, like your ligaments and joints. So that's why the hands always hurt so much. That's why the elbows and the knees and the under the neck here, where there's all this connective tissue. That's why all the connective tissue gets beat up, is because that's where these co-infections and Lyme love to reside, in their safe little habitat with lots of collagen to feed on, lots of food, away from the immune system. So not only does that make it hard to treat, but it takes a long time to do it when you are doing it, because getting the immune system to have a reaction in there just takes a long time.
That's a big part of it. And I think a lot of times when people think about, or they've been diagnosed with these different ones, Epstein-Barr is a great example of it. Just, it hides, it burrows, it finds, different tissue to hide in. It's the time factor. So let's chat a little bit about that, because, I don't know that we are the most patient, people on the earth when it comes to, and for that matter, when it comes to our health, and part of it is conditioning. Part of it is that, you watch a commercial, and if it says you got joint pain, here, take this, and, more or less they're saying it'll be gone tomorrow. But that's probably not the case with Lyme and their friends. So how do I say that? It's Lyme. If I'm calling it Lyme's, it's Lyme's, that means Lyme with their friends.
Yeah.
Okay. So Lyme and their friends, this obviously isn't a magic wand, right? So I work with a lot of Epstein-Barr, et cetera. So these are not overnight, procedures or protocols or, lifestyle changes to make. So maybe a little insight on that. What is realistically, if someone was okay with the real news about really trying to really get rid of Lyme, what would you tell them? How many months, how many years would you tell them that they would have to go all in?
So it's always a delicate situation with that, but I'm pretty straightforward and pretty blunt. So I tell people quite often, this is an 18-month to 2-year process, and that's the average. So have I seen people get faster results? Yeah, I've seen 6 months. Have I seen people get slower? I've got one person going into year 4, but when he walked into my office, he was a 30-year-old on a walker that slowly wasted away because no one could figure out what was going on. He was diagnosed with B6 toxicity. And I pricked his finger and looked at his blood and saw more bacteria in that prick than I saw red blood cells. Wow. And I said, oh, that's not normal. I've actually never seen that before. And his uncle, hilariously, who is still and was a client of mine at the time, sent him in for neuropathy, by the way, because he had pain in his feet. And he's like, can you fix this, fix his back and fix that? And I was like, well, I mean, maybe you can send him in. Completely different story. Thank goodness I knew about all this other stuff besides just the chiropractic that I was working with then. But yeah, I mean, it's 18 months to 2 years. It's not a fast process. And it's because you've got to work through building the body back, optimizing the immune system, getting the mitochondria healthy. While doing those things, you're working on all those different infections. I don't typically see somebody that has less than 8 to 10 infections when they come into my clinic, at least. But I'm also working with some pretty sick people quite often because, well, by the time you realize or find out that it's Lyme, for most, it's been there for a while. Another way that I've said it is, well, how many years have you been sick? That's at least a month per year. When those people have been sick for 20 years, I'm like, well, there's 20 months for you. But unfortunately, with all the chemicals, toxins, mold, and stress in our environment, I'm seeing young people get it and within a year crash and then still take a year to 2 years to get well for some.
Doc, what are some of the common co-infections that you see that are right there hand in hand?
So statistically speaking, Babesia, Bartonella, and Ehrlichia are the top 3 infections that Western medicine has associated with Lyme disease. But I would say 98% has parasites, and probably 50% of Lyme has mold as a co-infection, which are technically higher than what Western med studies have shown, which Babesia, I think, is 40%. Bartonella is somewhere in the 20 to 30%. And this is all by testing for the Western med, because they're looking at that blood testing, which is awful for pretty much all of us.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the same thing goes, I know, with mold, and I know you know this, like, there's really not good, and I get this, I literally had this question today: what's the best mold test to have? And I don't have a good enough mold test to say take this one or spend or invest your money in this one specifically. So let's, if we can, I know you work a fair amount with mold as well, and we'll loop back to Lyme in just a moment here. Let's just talk about mold just a little bit, because we're here in Florida. A lot of our audience is here in Florida, and we have super high humidity, and it's a big deal down here. We got the ocean a couple feet away. There's always water. There's always, maybe just a little explanation. I know that could be an entire show there, but there's different types of molds. If we were gonna, if you were gonna share with our peeps tonight, like, one, how do you know if there's mold in your house? What's the simplest way, other than maybe going out? I know you can get like a mold test, like a Petri dish, and see if it grows mold.
Yeah.
Something I think you get right on Amazon. But how about, what are some of the common things that someone might notice in their house if they have mold?
You're right. That's a rabbit trail we can run down. You always want to look where there potentially is dampness. So look around your sinks, look around your window seals, look in your plants. Those are some really quick and easy. Your fridge, your dishwashers, your washer and dryers. If you have a front load washer and dryer, that's never a good thing. Front loaders are terrible when it comes to mold. I actually do recommend a couple of testings. I recommend an ERMI, which is a dust sample from your home. It typically runs about $300, but it's about the best thing out on the market. I am not a fan of the Petri dishes, because things like black mold just don't move from the wall far enough out to land on most Petri dishes. Air tests, again, same problem, is black mold. It pops off the wall and falls. It's heavy. It's a heavy spore. Whereas aspergillus, some of that gets so fine that gravity doesn't even affect it. So it can float miles. And if it's in your house, then the amount goes up. When you wipe dust, you can get a test and send that out. And I use Great Plains Laboratories to do a body mold test. And I compare the two together and use that information to make a decision on, are we dealing with mold? And it's really, it's not perfect. There is no perfect, but it's really gotten me a long way with that. Because even doing some muscle testing, doing physical evaluations, I've missed some, whereas I said, oh, go run these tests too, and it'll come back positive on that test. I'm like, okay, there we go. So I do like both of those tests pretty well. Again, nothing's perfect. And learning as a practitioner to read an ERMI test, reading it accurately and knowing which ones are important because they can make someone sick versus just being your home, that's a whole nother, education in the mold realm.
Yeah. And I think you'd probably agree with me on this one, that mold, very much like Lyme and some other of these pathogens, that a lot has to do with the host. Two people can live on the same roof. You can have mold. One person becomes big time ill and the other person may not be affected at all.
Oh yeah. Lyme and mold, they have to have the right host, right? So if you have a genetic SNP that is allowing for your body not to detox well, that doesn't methylate to keep your mitochondria strong. So there's like the HDLR gene for mold, but there are so many others that weaken your system, that allow you to be vulnerable to where you accumulate toxicity from the environment so much quicker. And yeah, I know, for instance, myself, I can be in a moldy room and I'm okay, whereas my girlfriend, not at all. Mm-hmm. I've even known that for long enough that if we get 2 hotel rooms with me and friends, I'll go to the moldy one and I'll allow certain friends to be like, no, you got to be over there because you can't handle it. And it's going to wreck not only our weekend, but potentially much longer than that for that person. Because honestly, out of all the bad guys out there that we deal with, mold has to be in the top 3. I think mold is even worse than Lyme, because mold literally is used in bioweapons. It is used to suppress your immune system. They've taken mold mycotoxins and created immunosuppressant drugs out of the chemical structure of them. Like, mold is awful. And that goes for anybody. Even I'm not going to want to be in a black mold room because it will take down just about anybody if you're there long enough with the bad enough types of mycotoxins. So mold is a wrecking ball for your health.
Yeah, earlier when you were just talking about like the co-infections and how Lyme, kind of suppresses the system and makes everything else vulnerable. I kept thinking that's exactly what mold does, but maybe just like 5x to some degree. And especially if you're living in it, and that like you're living in it and breathing in it every day, and then you go through a stressful season or you have something else that compromises your immune system, you can really get yourself in some trouble there. All right, so let's continue to move forward. So let's go back to Lyme for just a moment here. How about the old school symptom of, let's say you got bit by a tick? How does somebody know? Because right now, everyone who gets bit by a tick believes they have Lyme disease. Oh, I know. So, and I get it, and I get it. Like I get it, and I'm not like joking at my clients or anything, but like they'll be like, "Hey, I got a bit by a tick here." I knew when growing up back in Connecticut, we looked for that traditional bullseye. Is that still accurate? Is that for the tick bite itself?
So I looked at a meta study of dozens of studies that did, okay, bit by a tick, we test the tick. Did you get a bullseye rash when it actually had Lyme in the tick? Like, so they found the tick, they went and tested it and cultured it, which is probably the only way you're really going to know if Lyme is got in you, and most accurately, because like I said, body testing is awful. It was about 20 to 40% of people will get that bullseye rash. Okay. So not that many. And you have to see it, identify that that's what it is, and then find a doctor that will actually acknowledge it. So even if 40% of people got it, 5 or 10% of people are going to get help from it once you go through those other steps there.
Got it. Yeah. So I guess that can't hang your hat on the bullseye. Yeah.
Not at all. No way.
So, just random here. How about the dogs? We see ticks on them all the time, right? Can they contract the same? This might be way out of my question here, or your league. Can they contract the same Lyme that we do, and does it have the same impact?
So I'm definitely no vet, but I have talked with a lot of vets because, well, maybe they're clients or otherwise. And it's funny because vets are way more accepting of the fact that Lyme disease and parasites and these co-infections can be really detrimental to animals. So yes, they can pick it up. And honestly, this is maybe just my opinion and it's just my observation, but I don't remember growing up having so many diabetic or arthritic animals that you're giving all these prescriptions and services to, as I know of friends doing now. So I think they're coming right along with us as our environment gets more toxic and our food gets more watered down from nutrients and more filled with preservatives. So does theirs. And I feel like animals are coming right along with us, getting sicker and sicker, which makes them more vulnerable and able to get that Lyme disease.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's talk a little strategy here. So, you talked about mitochondria earlier, and so our audience. Again, if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat here in the on the Zoom, or if you're live on Facebook, you can send them in there. A lot of the audience here that are listening, pretty well educated. They're on their track of becoming superhuman. They're diving into their health, which is awesome. And this tribe is awesome. And a lot of them incorporate things to help things like the mitochondria, like intermittent fasting, for example, helping kill off the bad cells and strengthen the new cells and help rewrap some of that mitochondria. Are those some of the strategies that could be incorporated in some of the programs that you do?
Oh, definitely. Mitochondrial support, doing things such as, how about red light? Yeah. To boost up a little bit of photonic energy for the mitochondria is one that I talk about quite often. I love red light. Since I started using red light, I was able to go to the gym and squat twice as much per month because I was only able to do about once a month previously after all the abuse I put in my body through college sports with Lyme. So that got me to being able to do it every single day. I do several other things. I took a cold shower last night. That's no fun, but it's definitely beneficial and boosting to your body. I intermittent fast every single day. And these are all strategies that I talk to clients about. We do a number of supplements, like I said, methylation earlier, building up the B vitamins, I use Mito ATP from Cellcore, which is probably one of my favorite things for mitochondrial support. Although the side effect of it is it starts to kick out all the toxins in the mitochondria that are holding down the little motors in there. Because your mitochondria is a powerhouse, right? So got little motors in there, and if they get clogged up, you don't make energy well. So Mito ATP goes and helps unclog that. You got to make sure you're oxygenating your tissues. So we talk about taking supplemental oxygen or other breathing strategies to increase oxygenation of your tissue. And then minerals, you have to have the proper mineral content in your body. So we run a hair tissue mineral analysis and look through it to make sure that you have balanced minerals and are getting the minerals in that are going to help your mitochondria to support the process of building energy or ATP. So do you have magnesium and cobalt? Do you have all of the good minerals, like for instance, sodium and potassium, to move nutrients in and out of your cell to make that energy? So yeah, we talk mitochondria constantly, because if your mitochondria are healthy, you're making energy. If you're making energy, you have enough energy to supply an immune system and rebuilding system for all of your tissues. No infection can live long in your body well if your mitochondria are operating optimally, which is the first thing they break down. And so it's the first thing that glyphosate and radioactive elements like deuterium that's in our water and mold go to wreak havoc on. And I look at organic acid tests constantly that show just what I'm saying, is those processes like the Krebs cycle and fatty acid oxidation, which are the cycles that make energy in our body. I just see those just wrecked in people that are sick with Lyme and mold and so on.
Love it. I love the organic acid test. It's almost that gold standard. It gives us so much data to extract from there. Again, not an easy test to read, but nonetheless, tons of information. Doc, let's back up for a second. The red light for a second there. That's I know, side topic here, but nonetheless, you brought it up. Talk to me a little about that red light. What was that? So
this one, I have honestly 3 different brands.
Okay.
I have Mito Red Light and I have Therasage is the 2 that I use primarily. They just have different purposes. The Mito Red Light is this big panel that I just turned on, super powerful. You want to keep it about 6 inches away from you because it does create some EMFs. But it's pushing out a ton of light to cover your body, and it increases photonic energy, which honestly, for the guys listening, you put this onto your male parts and it can increase your testosterone a couple hundred points. In some cases. Yeah, that's a big deal for guys. They're like, wait, what?
Where does one buy this thing?
Yeah.
You definitely can go to my link tree on my pages, but Mito Red Light is that company's name. Now, Therasage is actually from Florida. I love their tech because they've got a infrared sauna that has 2 red lights in it. So you're getting 2 therapies at once. You can also take those red lights out, and they've got like a 10-foot cable on them, and it's like a soft, twistable one. And my girlfriend will get a headache, she'll just wrap it around her neck and then go to sleep. If her back hurts, she likes to work from bed with her laptop on her knees. Not that I recommend that, but you can't tell your girlfriend what to do. And she'll work with it on her back, and that helps her. And it's the same technology, except for Therasage has a tri-light in there. So it has 3 frequencies versus just the 2 that Mito Red Light has, but it's not as big and it doesn't project as far onto your body. So either one works. And they both have the same basic effect, but it's just getting red light on your tissue. And I tell you what, man, my legs don't get hardly sore anymore compared to what they used to. When I'm doing red light, I can work out more often. My testosterone's up, my energy's up. I mean, red light is an incredible benefit and tool, just like all those other things I was listing off, but it's so easy.
Mm-hmm. So how often do you do this red light?
10 minutes twice a day.
All right. Love it. So just right there, that was a bunch of gems. I'm sure everyone loved that. So in there, I think a lot of the folks that are listening to this are going to be very familiar with just what you said there. And it's almost like, I love hearing you say what you just said there, because these strategies for building health are exactly that. They're building health. And then if you line up the bad guys, line up Lyme, line up mold, line up Epstein-Barr, line up who name it, hormone imbalances, building health is really the strategy for all of these. So, ice tank, sauna, intermittent fasting. I'm sure, you got some low carb diet type, methodologies.
Oh,
out of your life, eating organic, getting rid of the toxins, the chemicals that are on your countertops, and all of those other types of things here. So, man, that was awesome right there. I might just be visiting your website. Not that I need any more testosterone, but who can't use a red light in their life?
I'll send you the link. We'll put the link in the show notes for everybody if people want to be able to grab that.
Or if they're just curious and want to see what it looks like. Yeah.
Sounds like it has a range of benefits, right, Jaban?
Well,
anybody can use this?
You can use red light. Honestly, they're making a cap at Therasage to help regrow your hair because it's
really?
actually going to get onto the follicles and help you regrow hair.
But like the Bart regrow hair?
I don't know to what extent, but maybe, who knows? We can give him a testing. But it helps with your skin healing too. So like I said, my girlfriend loves it because she dealt with acne until we got rid of some parasites and co-infections there, and her skin is clearing up. So getting rid of some of even the she says there's a lot of damage to her skin. I don't see it, but I guess love is blind. But yeah, so I mean, it's just general tissue healing. And then when you supercharge certain tissues, they produce more hormone. But that's the thing, guys. Like you brought up hormone healing, right? So if your mitochondria are healthy, well, mitochondria make a lot of your hormones. That's where hormones are coming from, in part. So if you can crank up your mitochondria, you're going to have a lot better hormone production overall.
Yeah. And what about you mentioned a couple of times parasites. So how do people know if they've got parasites? Or because that's super common, right? Like a lot of us will have parasites at one stage or another.
A great friend of mine, the owner of Cellcore that I was talking about earlier, that we drove to Wisconsin together. He says, put your fingers on your arm. Do you have a pulse? Okay, you have parasites, which might be slightly an overstatement, but let's think about this. Like, we deworm our cats, dogs, horses, cows, and whatever other animal you have, we deworm them, right? It's a known thing. There are foreign countries that, same thing, they deworm themselves once a year because, well, we're going to get organisms in our body. And it's just a reality. Yet in westernized civilizations, we keep saying, oh, well, we're too good for that. We don't have that. Well, no, we're not. We pick up organisms too, and we're eating food from around the world. We don't just eat food from our backyard anymore, to where maybe our body's built an immunity to it. And also, let's talk about this. The Japanese eat sushi, which definitely has parasites, but what do they eat it with? Wasabi.
Oh yeah.
And in Italy, they used to use a ton of oregano on everything. And guess what oregano and wasabi are? They're antiparasitics.
Oh, okay.
What do we pour, at least in the US, what do we pour over everything? Sugar, which just goes to feed the yeast and the parasites. So we've not only stopped treating ourselves for the things with protocols or doing an antiparasitic medication once a year or something, which is what some countries do. We stopped eating the herbs and the food that protected us. We've wrecked our guts with antibiotics and everything else. So pretty much, I almost agree with Todd, because here's the last piece of that story. I had a client that was 19 years old that called me, and her complaint was stomach aches and a bunch of other stomach related issues and food allergies. We all know somebody with food allergies these days. But I asked her, I said, out of 10 of your friends, how many have a digestive tract issue?
Yeah.
She said, without hesitation, 10.
Yeah.
It's just especially in the female population, which 91% of my following when I look on my social medias is female. So I get the opportunity to ask them a little bit more often. We men, we prefer to just die of heart attacks at like 40 and 50 because we ignore our health. Whereas women, at least will do something about it. Sorry, guys, if you're listening out there, it's just kind of the truth. Women, when I ask them that question, especially under the age of 40, they pretty well say 9 or 10 out of 10 have gut issues. So parasites.
Yeah.
And what about if parasite tests come up negative?
Parasite tests are basically worse. Well, I think they are worse than Lyme testing. And it's because, again, we test for what's near us and close to us in our environment, right? So what's in the lakes and ponds here in Kansas City, that's what I'm going to test for. And then there are thousands of parasites and we'll test for 20 on most of those tests. And even the stool samples, if you look at the statistics, they're from morning stool sample to night stool sample on the same day. So if I poop in a cup and send it off on the same day, it can be 60% different because we just don't have that science down yet. It's not something we're great at yet. And that's unfortunately the best standard of care that we can give you for a parasite sample at this point. And then parasites are experts, which Lyme can do this too, at doing something called cyst form or encapsulating themselves. So they hide themselves in biofilms. They protect themselves. And that biofilm is a mucus layer. So when you go into the bowel through a colonoscopy, they have adhered themselves with mucus to the barriers. And if you talk to integrative gastrologists, they will even tell you that, you know, you look at somebody who's done a lot of protocols versus somebody who hasn't, and the mucosal layer of how perfectly clean it looks changes. And well, shoot, I've just got clients that love to send me pictures. And at first, when I started working with parasites, it was way fun to see all the pictures of things coming out of them. Now I'm like, they're like, do you want to see it? I'm like, I mean, if you don't want me to, I'm good. I'm over that piece. Although if you want me to see it, I can help you identify what's coming out.
Oh, yeah. Crazy. I mean, yeah.
Really interesting that like in our country, our culture, we don't even want to talk about parasites. So, you know, I'm sure you do it with your clients as well. When you know, your patients come in and we say, wow, that sounds like you got some kind of parasite, and it rolls off our tongue real easy because we know that gut ache. Listen, if you've had food poisoning, you got a bout of diarrhea, you got a parasite. Yeah, period. It's not even a question. There's a parasite creating a disruption. And that is often just one that we just step back from. And I get it. Like so many people then want to test for it. And I agree. And I appreciate you kind of, you know, saying that a lot of the testing is just not there yet. It's not accurate because we're literally talking about thousands of different of types. Yeah, we have some of the roundworms and tapeworms and stuff like that we can do a decent job at identifying. The beauty is, and then I'll have you kind of speak to this just a little bit. Oftentimes with parasites, to me, is one of the easier ones. Well, I take that back. Parasites to some degree, treating parasites can be relatively straightforward, I think, versus a mold or an Epstein-Barr or something like that. So, any thoughts on that one?
Well, I mean, yeah, like we were saying, there's thousands of parasites. They've spent a millennia trying to figure out how to hide in the guts of different types of organisms so that they don't trigger an immune response. And then we're going to go and look for an immune response half the time as the test. So we're just not there yet on the testing. And parasites, you know, I start with parasites. Oftentimes seeing results from getting rid of parasites can be quick. You know, in the first couple of months, where sometimes mold or Epstein-Barr can be a year. Getting rid of parasites like Babesia and Strongyloides can be really tough because they get a grip on somebody, and that can be pretty tough. But, you know, would I rather have somebody come in with a parasite than mold? Yeah. Epstein-Barr for me seems like it's that opportunistic infection that we've got to get rid of everything else first, and then the body does a decent job of clearing it, in my opinion. But that's if you get rid of everything else first, like the molds and the parasites and the Lyme and the metals and the glyphosates and all that. Because if you don't do that first, then Epstein-Barr can be a major problem because it's so good at hiding and keeping itself going in your body because, well, your immune system can't keep it at bay.
Yeah. So, it's interesting when we start talking about all that. And, you know, I think the nice thing is too, we also mentioned, we're going to wrap up in just a moment here. So if people are thinking, man, oh my God, I'm doomed. I've been exposed to all this different stuff. Let us not forget that how powerful the human body is, this innate intelligence, this innate immune system really is. And that if we're willing to put the effort in and find the strategies, find someone like yourself who has dealt with these and literally has strategies. And that's the big thing. When we're out there fishing and we're in the wrong ponds, you know, fishing for the wrong fish, you're probably going to, you know, end up with nothing. So, you know, in this scenario like this, if you think you have them, and I'm talking to all the listeners right now, that if you think that you have something this, you know, reach out. You don't have to navigate this by yourself. And also know that the human body is absolutely incredible. in one way or another, whether it's a 6-month program, a year, or 18 months, that time is going by. Like you might as well be working on something that's going to benefit you in that time period versus waiting or pushing it down the road. The challenge with this, and Doc, you probably would agree, the farther we push this down the road, often the more difficult it is. Yeah. So, just a simple reminder that even if you feel like, oh my goodness, I probably have mold, I probably have Epstein-Barr, I probably have parasites, there's a good chance you got them all in. You're still walking, talking, breathing, and moving and grooving. And now if you just apply some strategies, that's when you can literally start to see every day look better than the last one. So, all right. So Doc, I appreciate you being here. Karen's going to throw one more question at you, and then we'll wrap this up.
Before I ask my last question though, where can people find out more about you, Jaban, if they want to hear more about what you have to say?
Yeah, so my Instagram, Facebook, and website are all just Dr. Jaban Moore. So put those into any one of those places and you can find me. And I put a lot of content out because, like I said, education is key. And like Doc was saying, simply the worst thing you can do if you know that you're dealing with these things is wait. Just take action. Well, no matter what that action is, imperfect action is going to get you a lot further than waiting for that perfect action and never starting.
Well, I wonder if that comes into the answer for my second question. So we always like to make health simple here on the show. So we ask every guest our last question, which is, what is one action? You've given us so much info, but what's one action that listeners can take today, right away, to move them towards their goal of becoming superhuman?
Oh man, just one. I mean, taking action is the key there. Like I just said, but if I had to pick one thing, gosh, there's so many great topics. And what I would say is, go get your red light. No, I don't know. I tell people simple things. I like to leave little simple things here on topics like this, because we can go into really deep, dark places. But it's do something simple. My latest, greatest favorite thing, start drinking distilled water.
Yeah.
Because it's the only kind of water that removes some of the radioactive elements that we're finding are just absolutely destroying the mitochondria. Literally had a client come in today that since I told him to start drinking distilled water, which you have to put minerals back in because there's no minerals in distilled water, he's like, it turned the lights on in my body. Like, he was chronically ill the last decade and he's only 23. And it just, this massive shift in his body because he stopped drinking toxic water. And it's so simple and it's cheap to buy. So I like to leave little easy things when I get asked questions like that. So try distilled water.
Huh, interesting. All right, well, we love it. Thank you so much again. We so appreciate you being here and appreciate everything you're sharing out there. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. I loved it. Enjoyed it.
Doc, I appreciate they came on tonight, especially after days seeing all your patients and helping people. I pray that you continue to do what you're doing, man. You're a gift to all of us. Your community's lucky to have you, and keep spreading the word just like you do, and keep educating. We need more people like you doing what you're doing. And for everyone that's listening tonight, you guys know, keep doing your thing, keep taking deliberate action for your mind, for your body, for your overall wellness. You all be awesome.